Hello, hello, hello. How are we all doing? How are we? How are we? Now, just need to check. Can you see my presentation? We had a couple of little technical issues just before we started. Can everyone see me and can everyone see the presentation? Just pop in the chat that you can see me and that you can see the presentation. Yes and yes, hooray, very good. Okay, wonderful. Doesn't everyone love a little bit of last minute technical anxiety just before you get online? I'm so glad to be here with you all. I'm very glad you can all see me and tune in okay. It's fantastic. Very, very, very pleased to see you all. How is your day going? How are you doing? Where are you tuning in from? I'd love to know where you all are. Where are you all currently at the moment? How is everybody? How is everybody? How are we all doing? I'm just going to make sure that my team know that I am now online. One moment. All right. So, okay, fantastic. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. Lovely to be here with everybody today. I'm so glad. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, this one. Absolute favorite topics. I've spent the last decade studying and the Interviewers Masterclass. I know we've got a couple of our team online here, and we've got our amazing Grace online. She's tuning in. Grace is our temp interim hiring specialist. And I know that we've also got Bella online as well. And Bella is our HR people and talent hiring specialist. So lovely to have both of those team members here. And oh no, James, you have no sound, but I think everyone else has sound. I think that's right, isn't it? I think so. I think so. Okay, well, I think we should get going because we were a minute late. We were a minute late starting. So I'm going to share with you, I think, what is the most important aspect of you building your culture and of you retaining and developing your teams. And I'm going to explain why and how that is impacted by how you interview. I'm going to give you lots of tools and I'm going to give you some theory. And I hope you're going to find some immediately implementable aspects of what I'm about to share that you can utilize. And Anna, thank you so much for being here. You can now leave and go and enjoy your lunch. Thank you for joining. So I wanted just to double check with everybody here who is interviewing right now or who is about to start interviewing. Just pop that for me in the chat. How many of you, I want to read the room, just sort of see how many of you are interviewing, how many of you are, right, okay, lots of you, okay. Fantastic, great, fabulous. And Barbara, this may not quite apply to you as a job seeker, but I think it will be an interesting insight nonetheless. Wonderful. All right, well, let's get started, shall we? A couple of little things to highlight to you all. And that is the session is being recorded. Nobody can see or hear you, and we will share the recording with you afterwards so that you can reference it, so that you can look back on it, because we'll go through it a little bit of a cadence today. We'll be here for about 45 minutes together. I love interaction. There is something always rather strange about being behind a screen, and most of the training and development and keynotes that I deliver are in person. So it's great to be able to interact with you. So do ask questions, do challenge, do share a different opinion. After all, that's how we all learn and grow. So I look forward to welcoming and inviting in what you might have to share with me today, what your knowledge is. Now, I think I know a fair few of you online right now, and but there's some I definitely don't believe I've met. My story is that, gosh, I think it was now 11 years ago, I had spent since graduating, I had spent my first 17 years in recruitment and search and selection. And when I left a partnership that I was part of a very big group of companies, I also happened to coincide with leaving my marriage at that time and restarting my whole life. And I had this absolute sense of clarity around what a vision could look like, a different vision for search and hiring. And I knew that we would do that in 2 specialist areas. It's now 3 specialist areas in our business. But part of that journey was also becoming a speaker, an ICF coach, and I now spend a lot of my time training in the organizations that we support in hiring for EAPA operational and business staff, HR people and talent, and marketing and communications. And most of our business comes through recommendation because of all of the additional partnership aspects that come from working with us. And of course, I would love to hear from you if we can support you too. Another big focus point for me when starting a business was that legacy and rigor are going to be a huge part of how we operated it as a business. And I'm so proud to share with you that we're B Corp and W Corp certified, and that I work a lot with female pipeline projects, whether that's through We Are the City, through my affiliations with different universities and education institutions, being a delegate for the UN Women, and lots of other ways that I try to make sure that we're leaving really positive footprints in the sand as a business. We have an extraordinary team of richly experienced women, and I'm really looking forward to having the chance to get to know you better. I'll let you know how you can keep in touch with us at the end of today's session. There are lots of clients that trust us with both hiring and training. Here's a little, I guess, a little file or sort of little insight into the sorts of organisations that we support, and we'd love to hear from you if we can support you too. So let's just start with where you're at right now, and I'd love to get a sense check. What we know is that only 9% of anybody interviewing in London right now has received any form of interview training. That is in sharp contrast to what most organisations say is their most important aspect of their success, their productivity, how they can meet the challenges of today's market, which is their people. We just aren't investing in training as we should be of our line managers, and not just line managers, of many HR professionals as well. Perhaps might have touched on it in CIPD training, but not since. And as a result of that, what I tend to receive as feedback from the clients that I work with is that, yeah, we have unstructured interviews. We don't use any data in our hiring decisions. We have sometimes more than 3 interview stages. We have lots of people involved, no clear focus for each stage. There's very little focus on candidate experience. We've not had any interview training, and there's loads of inconsistency, or there's that sense of, yes, this person's perfect, and then they come on board and they're working in the team, and then lo and behold, 6 months later, they're not performing. Share with me what you notice in your organization is part of the hiring process right now. Is it unstructured interviews? Is it lack of data? Is it lots of people involved for no particular reason? Is it lack of focus in each stage? No interview training? Just pop in the chat for me what's immediately you're noticing that actually all of those. Someone's just messaged me directly. Yeah, lots of people involved, inability to, yes, yeah, committee interviewing, unstructured interviews, too many stages. Yeah, keep them coming. It's really good to read the room for what's going on with everybody. These challenges are normally a we thing, not a me thing. So yeah, okay. So lots of different aspects there that gives an opportunity. And for me, if you have any of these going on in your organizations right now, it's not a criticism. It's not even necessarily a negative. It just provides a massive opportunity for improvement, provides you a gift, because it gives an immediate sense of, okay, this is something we can focus on that will offer us immediate improvement. All right. So let's have a little look at how do we change our direction of travel so that you can be best in class, so that you can have the opportunity to really develop skills and your capacity as an organization to attract best in class talent, to be front of pack in terms of your peers, in terms of how you're bringing people on, how you're developing them, and the impact that then that, of course, that creates across culture, performance, productivity. Now, I'd love to know how many of you are asking these questions. And if you are asking these questions, I'm going to let you know that hopefully by the end of today's session, you are not going to want to ask these questions again. Why? Because essentially these questions create a huge amount of bias. They don't give us any data. They don't give us any sense of likely behavior. They don't determine motivators, and they spark all of our unconscious bias. So let's have a little review together and just really use this time for you to reflect on where you are as an organization and as an individual. Because from all of the workshops that I've run and the interactions that I've had with the clients, these are the most common gaps. So there is often a lack of clarity around your playbook. And what I mean by your playbook is you should have a guide for what interviewing looks like in your organization. There should be a clear direction of travel, a clear sense of who is involved at each stage and why. Preparation for interviews. Have you got a budgeted time? So what I mean for this is, do you have a pre-hiring huddle? Does everybody know what their roles are? Does everyone know what review you're going to have of CVs, or if you're working with recruitment partners like us, what information you're going to expect us to provide to you? And is that preparation effective? Or are they grabbing a CV, walking into the room and kicking off the interview? Do you know that everybody that's involved, including you in your interview, has the skill level, is delivering the right storytelling around the business, is asking the right questions? Are they knowledgeable about the legal compliance? And are they providing effective feedback? I'm going to share with you a scorecard that may be useful to you in just a little while. Most importantly, almost as important as the interview itself for candidate experience, is what happens next. What's the follow-up process? How is that candidate receiving feedback? One of the keys to going from okay to good, or from good to great, is to create a structured process whereby every candidate at first stage has the same interview experience, as in is asked the same questions. Exactly the same at second and at third. And I'm going to share with you what great could look like for you, that you can take a picture of, screenshot, watch this recording back. But structured interviews are the game changer. And behavioral interviews, perhaps it was competency-based interviews, then it changed to behavioral. Now our really strong focus is around structured interviews that utilize strong behavioral interview questions. But most people and most organizations will have line managers that go into interviews without any structure, without pre-prepared questions. They're asking different candidates different questions, which sparks all our bias, doesn't give us good decision-making capacity or capability, and actually doesn't give us that granular knowledge that somebody is going to be able to be not only additive in terms of culture, but is going to be able to perform in that role over the longer term. So what does this mean? Well, our ego gets in the way of how we interview. I mean, our ego gets in the way of all sorts of things. And this is that sense that we know best. Our instinct is fantastic when it comes to people. We know who works. And then we're completely confused as to why 6 months later they're not working out. And that's because we are hardwired to screw up our interviewing and our hiring process, because of confirmation bias, because of the halo effect, because of our feeling that we know what works. And we like to think of ourselves as excellent judges of character. But of course, we need evidence to be excellent judges of character. I'm inviting you today to think about how your ego gets in the way of your interviewing. There is that old saying, and I think it's the Head and Shoulders advert, if anyone's old enough to remember that. But actually, Laszlo Block, who is one of my favorite theorists on interviewing, he was Google's head of talent, incredible person who is also incredibly low ego in recognizing where Google got a lot right in terms of hiring, and also understanding where they got some stuff wrong, like asking how many golf balls can you fit into an aeroplane, didn't actually help whatsoever in terms of hiring the right people. Because there is this massive lost opportunity. And conversely to that, you have the most incredible capacity to increase your competitive advantage by bridging this gap. Because everyone says we're people first. I rarely hear anyone say we're not people first, but your interview is the opportunity to truly define that. Because when you look at the statistics, when you look at the lost time involved in hiring decisions, poor hiring decisions being made, the impact is colossal. And the impact on culture is vast. And I think from a storytelling and a brand perspective, we know that candidates are now more active than ever in sharing their interview experiences on all sorts of sites. There are multiple sites, not just Glassdoor now. And so for you to get this right will change your brand storytelling. There is no doubt about that. And that's at the beginning part. The equally important part is how feedback is being delivered. And if you're working with recruitment partners like myself or our team, I want you to make sure that we're delivering feedback that is effective, supported, and supports your brand storytelling. It is really critical. 68% of all line managers felt unsure about what questions they should be asking. But there is an answer. That is the good news. There is an answer, and I'm going to share that with you now. You can go from a 30% chance of a successful hire, that's somebody that's outperforming expectation at a year mark, to a 90% success rate. And that is a combination of data from Harvard, McKinsey, Hunter and Schmidt, and another researcher, a leading researcher whose name I have just completely forgotten. But this is data backed, and I can send you all of the research that gives that figure of 90% over 30%. It's extraordinary, the difference. And this is bringing in your structured interview process. And that might look like a pre-hiring huddle, a determination of who's involved in what stage and why, what everybody's focus is at those different stages, core questions that will be asked. How you then compare that is up to you. I would invite you into a rating scale with brief notes, but I'll show you that in just a bit. And the benefits of this structured process are enormous. Firstly, it's going to save you loads of time, a bit of time in the beginning to implement it. After that, it will save you so much energy and time. More than that, it will decrease your legal exposure dramatically. It is scalable. It has incredible benefits. Productivity, performance, efficiency. It is absolutely there also to support you bringing in a richly diverse team, which, as we know, there are only gains to be had when it comes to bringing in a team that have diverse experience, knowledge, wisdom, backgrounds, and more. Now, when I'm working with a client, we look at gold standard interviewing, and we look at how we can work with the systems and the processes. And if it's a founder managed business, there's all sorts of nuances and quirks to different companies. And you have to work with what is, not with what perfection looks like, because I've never come across a perfect business. I don't know about you. But what we monitor when we start to change and shift how that company interviews, and I'm training the line managers, is we look at 30, 60, and 90-day impact. This is your baseline. So this is, you could pick one of these things and it will start to have an impact. And analyzing your job description as part of that hiring huddle. Is this job description fit for purpose? Are we really clear on this person's objectives? Are we clear in terms of this person's skill? And in terms of what this person is going to, I think also having in your job analysis is what success looks like. What does success look like in the first 30, 60, and 90 days? Is that in your job description? Setting out 5 or 6 great questions to ask at the first, second, and third stage. Baking in value at each stage. One of the things that we get feedback on most is at the first, second, and third stage, the same questions were asked. That's not going to bring you any value. So people having a direction at each stage is really important. I'd love for you to be data gathering, and I'm going to show you how to do that. You don't even need an ATS. And for me, I want to encourage CARL responses to interview questions. STAR responses are what we're traditionally, or more recently in the last decade, being told to seek out. So the situation the candidate faced, the task they had to undertake, the action they took, and the result of that action. I'm a much bigger fan of encouraging candidates to utilize the CARL response. So the challenge you faced, the action that you took, the result of that action, and the learning that came from that whole experience. It tells you an awful lot about somebody's ability to be coachable, accountable, creative, resilient, and more. I wanted to share with you a little snapshot of how you can predict the validity of your selection methods. Now, it's not surprising assessment centres come out right at the top because they combined skilled and structured interviews, a work sampling or assessment, psychometrics. But as most of us aren't big organisations, assessment centres are often not viable or plausible. The second, which is what I'm inviting you to start to explore today, is bringing in skillful and structured interviews. Now, you can really double down on the effectiveness of that. And in fact, actually, I've got candidates interviewing with one of our clients, which is a big insurance firm in the city today, doing exactly this. They are having a skilled and structured interview followed by a work sampling assessment. So work sampling assessments work best when the work sample assessment is directly related to the work that they'll be undertaking. No two ways about that. You move down the ranks as you start to rely on personality assessments, but even further down the ranks is an unstructured interview. Tell me about yourself. Let's have a chat. References, why? Well, because you're only going to give people that are going to deliver great references. And you won't be surprised to find out that graphology and astrology isn't going to support your hiring decision whatsoever. Is anyone surprised by this data? Just pop in the chat button for me. Are you surprised by the statistics? And Schmidt and Hunter studied 80 years worth of data, 80 years worth of data attached to interviewing. Anyone surprised? Anybody, is this related? Yeah. What are you relating to right now? What's landing? Okay. All right. So we're not surprised. We're not surprised. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So some of you are surprised. Some of you direct messaging directly. There are some surprises in there too. Now, I can give you a rating scale that will make your life so much easier, is legally defensible, and will give you data to track against. I'm going to share that with you. You don't have to implement it. I'm just going to share it with you. And I'm going to give you that in just a second. There are some other things that will help you to drive much better decision making. So using peers in interview situations is really powerful. Why? Because we tend to perform better when we are with a peer. So having two people interviewing at the same time can be really, really useful. Having the same interviewers at first, second, and third stage, predetermined, each with a focus, each knowing what their slice of the interview process pie looks like, really powerful. Not influencing one another's opinion, and evaluating candidates without bias is also really key. How do we do that? We use it by using structured interviews. We deliver that by using rating scales. Here is the scoring system I want to share with you. And if you are able to create a form or a pro forma or have something online that with those set 5 or 6 interview questions, and by the way, you can then use tons of personality in sharing the vision, the mission, the values of the business, talking about the culture of the company and inquiring as to what this person is going to add to your culture. It doesn't mean we're stripping all personality out of interviews. It's just creating an anchor at each stage. There is lots of case law that if you are busy writing notes about a candidate, those notes belong to them. And I want to keep you protected. The great thing as well about a scoring system is you start to create an entry point at which you hire and when you don't hire, despite how much everyone likes the person. So you can track this data if you can keep it centrally. And I know that for some of you, this is not going to be for right now, but it's something to plant as a thought process that might potentially work for you going forwards in the future. What does it look like? Okay, well, look, here we are. You might have a different form of scoring system to the one I've just shared, but this is the sort of scoring system that might take place after every interview is completed. So you can start to track who is coming in and performing better than everybody else. What was their score at interview? Who's not performing so well? What was their score at interview? So you can take a screenshot of this, of course, and have a look at how you might be able to incorporate it completely, or perhaps look at how you might look at incorporating it moving forwards in some way, shape, or form. So where do we begin? So this is how to define your job description, or this is how to define how you want to create your hiring process. The first thing that I invite you to reflect on is, do you, before you start hiring for someone, set out the key performance objectives of that person? And I have included this here for argument's sake. This person, the key performance objectives for this particular person we're hiring might be to build and train a team, launch a product, reduce costs, upgrade our UX design, achieve particular sales goals, implement new systems. So we're looking at the tasks and the actions and the results they're going to need to undertake as key performance objectives. Then secondary to that is the job description. So the day-to-day skills, the experience, the competencies, the must-haves, and any particular training or academics. Just so I can read the room, are you using key performance objectives at the moment before you start your hiring process, so you really know what great is going to look like in this role? Is that something that you are doing? Game changer. I can absolutely promise you, complete game changer. And it also gives somebody real clarity around direction of travel, gives you opportunity to refer back to that in one-to-ones. It's really transformational. So some yeses, some mostly, some nos. And remember, when it's a no, it's not a criticism, it's simply an opportunity to up-level. So these are some of the questions that you might want to take back to your organization or for you yourself. Sorry, I whizzed through those a little quickly, that will help you start to determine much stronger job descriptions. We don't like to revisit job descriptions. It feels annoying. It doesn't feel like a great investment of time, but I promise you, if you lay that foundation, That job description is going to empower you to have far better job conversations during somebody's probationary period. It gives that individual far stronger clarity around expectation. You've already set out what great looks like. So that person knows what great looks like. So often we don't know or understand what that is. So my final point on job descriptions is, what is the 30% stretch for that role in that first year? So what are you expecting in terms of that development of the role over the first year? So often it's a list of duties and responsibilities, but it's not going to drive a top performer, or it's not going to drive top performance in the role, I don't believe, without that definition really clear. Now, when I'm talking about our hiring committee, I'm talking about getting super clear at the beginning of each process about who's involved at what stage and why, and what their focus is, and what those core anchor questions are going to be. There's lots of reasons why hiring committees work brilliantly well. And some organizations spend so much time bringing everyone into the hiring. And actually, that kind of hiring committee completely screws up the hiring process. It's inefficient. You're never going to please everybody. Everyone's asking the same unstructured or sort of random unstructured questions. People then might have had a bad day. They've been pulled in for 5 minutes at the end of an interview process, and they come out and say, oh, no, I don't think they're right. And all of a sudden, this person that everyone has invested lots of time and asking really great questions, that understands this person has the skills, the competencies and the capability, as well as the culture add to deliver, is suddenly dismissed from the process. It does not work. It does not work. So you have the capability with clearly defined hiring committees to really transform a candidate experience and the internal experience. According to huge amounts of research, this is what we should all be hiring for, no matter what the role, from postroom to boardroom. I doubt anyone even has a postroom anymore, do they? But as you know what I'm talking about. And it's coachability. Does this person have the ability to receive feedback and use it as rocket fuel for development, or are they going to take that feedback personally? Can this person read the room? Are they aware of others and their ability to interact, communicate, and connect with others as a result? Can they self-regulate? Is this person going to proactively look to solve problems, to spot opportunities for where things could be better? Or is this person somebody that struggles to take accountability? Does this person have intrinsic motivation, or are they going to require you to motivate them, which actually we know by science is very difficult to create as a leader? To motivate others, absolutely, you want to be able to set out a vision, a mission, values, of course, but the intrinsic motivation to deliver that vision comes from within, a desire to succeed. And there's some ways that you can spot people that are most likely to have that. I'm going to show you just a second. And then the right temperament for the role. That's going to differ for whether if you're in sales or if you're in back office or you're in middle office. All of those temperaments are going to be different. This playbook, this bespoking, what matters to you, your internal journey and the external journey, having that really clearly defined is an absolute game changer. So what's our strategy? Well, I'm going to share with you what it might look like. Now, you might have a pre-stage. I know myself from working with all sorts of different organizations that sometimes a pre-stage might be I bumped into somebody at a networking event, or I had a coffee. And of course, what you want to make sure that if your line managers are meeting people in random situations, then bringing them into interview with your organization, is do they understand how to translate the vision and values of your business? First day interview. This is what it should look like in terms of clear objectives. So are you evaluating qualifications and fit? Assessing communication skills, initial enthusiasm. This might be 30 minutes, it might be delivered by a HR representative, and I've just given you some focus points if that's useful. You may already have this predetermined, but it could be useful if you do not. And some sample questions of what might be helpful to include there too. Outcome is you can select your shortlist of candidates for the next stage. And of course, our role as recruiters is to deliver that first stage for you. Next stage, technical and behavioural. So again, the focus for this should be really understanding, can this person deliver against the role? So you might have a technical part of this interview process or assessment, as well as then the structured behavioural interview. Narrowing down your capacity for your top candidates for the final stage of the hiring process. I've broken this down a little bit further for you based on a 30-minute, 45-minute or 60-minute interview. And so here you can just see the timelines there are related to 30, 45 and 60 minutes. And I have said show up on time because it is one of the things that is most disconcerting and also leads to a sense of not being respected or having time valued from candidates. It's the biggest complaint that interviewers haven't shown up on time. And it's a two-way street. And of course, if you are interviewing somebody that is considered to be of extreme value because of their experience, their capability, their motivators, their attitude, you are going to be no doubt competing against peer firms. So having that structure and also really understanding that the experience that you give them is going to have a huge impact on whether or not they decide to join your team. So my suggestion here for the final stage, so stage 3, is that culture ad, as well as the final assessment. And again, I've given you a potential structure here. And this may help you when you go back to your organizations to really clearly define who's involved and why, when. So this is all here for you to take away and to utilize as part of your process. And I hope that's going to prove useful to you so it's very clear. Clear feedback, all about your brand, all about your professionalism as an organization. Let candidates know, or let your hiring partner, such as myself, know what wasn't answered well, what was mixed, what was good, and what was excellent. One of my favorite questions that I think delivers a huge amount of information about somebody is this core question. And I'm sharing it with you so that you can really utilize it going forward. So one of our major key performance objectives as an organization is X. What have you done that's most comparable? Or one of the major key performance objectives in this role is X. What have you delivered that's most comparable? Describe that for me. How was that project determined that it was going to be for you to look after? What are the big challenges? What was the manager's style like? What skills did you use? What major likes and dislikes about the project? Understand more about the process. Walk through any major decisions that they took. How did you grow in that role? How did you grow through the project? What would you do differently? What was the recognition received? Those are all the probes that you can utilize. This thing around culture. So fit, having someone that just fits in, is probably a bit like the old school beer test, a gut feeling, someone they might like to go and have a pint with. But actually, culture ad is what is most important to high performing environments. So what do we need this person to bring that is going to be additive to our culture? And I've shared with you here some great questions that you can ask around culture ad that you may feel are useful in order that you are building and developing a high performance, high productivity, highly inclusive cultural environment. And these questions, I hope, will be supportive in your process at developing that. Knowing and understanding of how this person helps foster team environments can be incredibly critical to knowing whether this person's going to be culturally additive or somebody that's going to determine a more negative environment. And I've shared some more for you here too. And of course, as I mentioned, we're going to share the recording with you. You can take this away and reflect on these at your leisure and see what's going to work for you and your organization best. And I hope that there's some that are standing out to you. Grace that heads up interim and temp hiring is really enjoying the culture and questions. I also wanted to share with you some really impactful structured interview questions. We, of course, are not going to go through these one by one. I would bore you all senseless, but they're here so you can understand the why you would use them, and also hopefully start to adopt some of these in your hiring process. And I hope that these prove useful. Always hard to canter through this in less than an hour. But that's why you'll have the recording with you. Now, there are plenty of illegal interview questions, and there are plenty of times when these are still asked. You have a real duty of care to your organization to make sure that anybody that's interviewing knows what they cannot ask. It could be incredibly damaging to both your organization, to the individual, and to your brand if these questions are being asked at interview. And there are all sorts of questions that perhaps people don't understand that they shouldn't ask. So if somebody arrives with what looks like a broken leg and somebody says, oh no, what happened? Because they're on crutches, that actually could lead to discrimination, a case for discrimination. Even saying to somebody, gosh, you're tall, could also lead to a case for discrimination. So just looking through these, are there any again that surprise you that you're surprised shouldn't be asked at interview? Any that you're thinking, gosh, actually that's going to be really important that we discuss that? Anything here? No surprises. Wow, Sophie, gosh, you've been asked that every interview. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it's not illegal. I need to highlight that. However, we are seeing more and more that this is now becoming a grey area, that it's becoming a grey area. Okay, so take a look at the Equalities Act 2010, and that will hopefully help you. If you need to circulate that internally, it might be useful to you. So we're just going to spend the last 5 minutes of our session today just giving you the formula for success. So you want somebody's ability, soft and hard skills. You want what they're going to add to the job, to the culture. You want that to be times their motivation, and that is what delivers results. I really want your organization to be able to translate fantastic vision, missions, and values. We need to evaluate interviewer bias because it completely inhibits your ability to hire the very best talent available. You want to make sure that that candidate that comes and walks through your doors has an adjustment allowance. Are they given an opportunity to have some water, to make sure that they're in a comfortable space where they are facing the wall and not facing the door? where they're being informed about what the interview is going to look and feel like, where they're explained what the process is at your organization, giving clear instructions around the sort of interview answer structure that you're looking for, letting them know exactly how you are going to feed back to them. We want to make sure that that candidate is really clear on the additive value of this role. So what is the part that is not about money that you're sharing in the interview process in terms of the learning opportunity, the development opportunity, the project and the impact capability? This is just the moment that my laptop has decided. So these are the sorts of aspects, these are sorts of things that is most important to the candidates that are coming into your organization. They want growth, they want job stretch and learning, work-life balance, compensation, great teams, great leaders, and they want projects and they want the tech to support their capability to deliver the role. And it takes reflection from all of us that are interviewing. Am I being present? Am I being ethical and confidential? Am I establishing trust and safety? Am I making sure I am truly listening? And for me, that means always building in 5 or 10 minutes before an interview and 5 or 10 minutes after an interview's taken place, so that I can get rid of anything that's gone on that morning, whether it's I've been frustrated by an email, or perhaps I've had an argument with my spouse, or something else is going on, just so that I can let go of all of that and really get in the zone where I can truly listen. And that also helps eliminate bias. And when I come to the end of the interview, it also is super helpful to have that little bit of time so that I can write my feedback or share my feedback effectively, or do my scoring cards, whatever it is I'm following. Being heard and seen in an interview is critical. And the way to do that as the interviewer is to repeat back. So what I'm hearing is, or reflect back what I noticed about what you shared there was, and to respond, to nod, to smile, to acknowledge. Most people in your organizations will not be able to translate the values of your business. And I don't say that to be provocative. I say it because, having trained many organizations, most people don't understand how to translate that. So really getting a sense check in that huddle, especially if you've got more junior team members involved, is, can they explain all these features? Can they explain them well? Do they understand how the values of the organization translates on a day-to-day basis and will impact this particular potential new joiner? Values decision-making is really powerful. As I highlighted earlier, these are some of the ways that you can highlight key achievers or A+ performers, or however you want to determine it. And these are sorts of things that I would be looking out for at the end of your structured interview. Having a look at some of these aspects about how somebody's delivered in a role, or their experience, how it's highlighted, may be really useful for you to determine somebody that's capable of really adding value. Having the confidence to probe when you're asking those interview questions is just as important. Making sure that you're capable and your team is capable of probing so that you get that granular detail, so that you understand that this person is definitely telling the truth, because the more detail that we get into, the more challenging it is if we're not telling the truth, it is to deliver. And so that will give you a really strong indicator about somebody's integrity. Because your candidate experience really does matter. And you want to make sure that every candidate leaves your organization wanting to work for you, whether they're right for you or not. And we want to make sure that you are being protected, and that your brand and your storytelling is consistent, and that those leaving your office doors or at the end of a Teams call are going away and sharing what an incredibly positive experience that was. So here are my recommendations as we complete today's session. And this will give you really strong capability to start to transform your capacity to hire the very best talent that there is available. So your goal is to answer 2 key questions. Does this candidate possess the right qualifications to perform the tasks and duties, and do their values, motives, and personality match with the values and culture of the team and the organization? Let go of questions like, tell me about yourself. What are your main strengths and weaknesses? They will not help you. Once you've discovered those job requirements, make sure to develop really strong behavioral interview questions to measure them at each stage of the process. Create a standardized interviewing process for all candidates, and the same for the positions that you're hiring from. Take brief descriptive notes, use a scale if you can, in order that you're protecting yourself and also creating data decision hiring. So thank you very, very, very much. Here are some of the sources that we used today, in case that was useful. I want to say thank you for being here. You are welcome to reach out to me with any questions. And I've just realized that I did not share how to get in touch with me. So anybody that would like to reach out to me, perhaps you want some support on hiring or training, we'd love to hear from you. We'd be super grateful for your referrals and recommendations. It's how we've built the business. So thank you so much for being here with me, sharing your precious lunch break. I am so grateful, and so grateful that you were here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody. Very much hope to have a chance to work with you soon. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. I'm really pleased that it was informative. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for being here. Really, really grateful. Thank you so, so much. Lots to think about. Yes, good. Oh, that's lovely, Crystal. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful remainder of your Wednesday, whatever you are doing today. Thank you for having me. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.